Kia ora and welcome to Constellations and all that. I'm your host, Tracy Cartwright, and together we will be exploring the world of family constellations with facilitators and clients from around the world, looking at different perspectives and experiences in the work, having a cup of tea and just chatting with some friends around their experiences in constellations. We'd love for you to join us. I hope that you enjoy this series as much as I have loved making it. Kia ora everyone and welcome to Constellations and all that. Today I have the utmost pleasure of chatting with Francesca Mason Boring, and this is a real fangirl moment for me, so I'm so excited that you're here to have this conversation and share your wisdom and spend some time with me. I'd love for you to introduce yourself for the listeners and the viewers that aren't as familiar with you.
Well, thank you. And I really appreciate your work. I had the opportunity to meet you in Australia and got to see you again in Portugal. And I've actually been sort of not stalking you, but watching your work and and really appreciate all that you've done and the commitment that you have to systems constellation and the way that you open doors for people. So I'm having a fangirl moment myself, and
Oh,
I thank you for the invitation and the opportunity. And yeah, so I am one of your admirers, and I think
gosh.
that that's one of the things about this work that somehow it really invites people to be their full self, and
Mhm.
so we're able to see people in a really different light, really in a authentic, nurturing, helpful, strong. There's something really dynamic about what comes through with people when they're involved in systems constellation, when they're doing a constellation. So I've enjoyed listening to the podcasts, and I've been really fortunate, so blessed. The constellation work came to me in the middle of nowhere, now a little bit more than a quarter of a century ago. Had just began work at an integrative health clinic in a very small town. At that time, I don't remember how much less, but it was the biggest city for 2.5 hours, and it was less
Mm.
than 3,000 people. So the town that I live in, Evans, had only a post office. There was one store, one post office. I was very rural, and somehow Snee Victoria Schnabel met the director of this really innovative integrative health clinic that had just been born in Colville, Washington. And so we came from different places, and Dr. Lon Hatfield, who was the director and one of the innovators of the clinic, actually met Snee Victoria Schnabel on a train when he was in Germany, showing his wife one of the places that he had gone to college in. And they chatted, and he asked her, "Would you be willing to come to Colville, Washington?" And she was a facilitator, one of the few really primary women facilitators. And so she said, "Of course I'll come." And I think there's no way she could have had any idea of like how much travel would be involved and how remote,
Yeah.
but she came and provided a training. It went over 2 years' time, and also extended her commitment here by also offering a training to a local Native American community. And so I was very fortunate to be able to participate in that as well. So it was my own family is, um, I come from immigrants, refugees, and on my mother's side, I'm Native American. I'm from the Shoshone tribe, which is a nomadic tribe in the Western United States. And so I have family that's involved in language preservation and tribal council. And so have had family very involved in different aspects of tribe and culture. My family participates in, we call them powwows, which is Basically a prayer and a coming together, a social gathering of Native people who dance. And belief is that the dancing in community, much in the way that I view constellation work, is a kind of a prayer, a communal prayer for the well-being of the land and the people, all of our families. So yeah, so for me, from the beginning, what arose was that there was so much overlap in my worldview between constellation work and Indigenous traditions. And so I found early that I was very limited in my exposure and I was a little bit ethnocentric. I thought it was only parallel and echoing Shoshone traditions or Native American traditions. But as I was so fortunate to interface with other cultures and meet people from other Indigenous backgrounds, I saw that there really was a kind of a universal Indigenous. And then it expanded to understanding that Hellinger, when he went to China, for instance, people spoke to him about this work actually representing the Tao. And then I also was fortunate to meet the elder in Switzerland, wonderful Swiss guy uh, in his 80s, who originally was being trained by one of his uncles or great uncles to be involved in healing, singing songs to plants, and basically being in conversation with plants
Yeah.
about what they would be able to provide. So the more I looked and the more I studied, I found that this indigenous knowing is really something that belongs to all of us. We all come from these roots. And
Mm.
family systems constellation and systems constellation is the place where I have felt really at home and not shamed by modernity in saying, this is how we're made. We're all
Yeah.
connected and we all have this capacity for knowing. So, yeah, so that's in a nutshell, maybe as a start.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. I always share that I know that Hellinger brought the work through in the version of family and systemic constellations in the late 80s, early 90s, around there. It was like brewing. But it's ancient work, isn't it? Like it's there. It's been around for since the people of Alpha, the original our original ancestors. I think it's morphed and evolved and it was brought through in a way that in a modern way for us to understand, but it's a remembering of who we are and what is deep inside us.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Now have shared that I think a couple of the things that really help us to be aware that we are so connected is the funny thing that happens when you're in a grocery store and you don't even know why, but you turn your head and someone is looking at you.
Mm.
And so it doesn't matter how far apart you are, how much distance, there's this, whatever the mechanism is, there's this way in which we have this ability to know where are we connected. And the other part that I think is always fun is if you've been thinking about someone and you kind of can't get them off your mind, and then you run into them, or you pick up the phone and they're on the other end of the line. So we really do have all of these things, but there's a book that I always recommend to people. It's called The Gift of Fear. And it's this wonderful book that's written actually by a retired detective. Had this most amazing, in his long career, he had this experience that there were these cases that he thought, this is weird. So he gathered everything together and he pulled out the data and the case histories. And what he found was many people, many people, when they have been assaulted or, God forbid, they've been raped or something like this, many of those people, they shared that they had had a bad feeling, right?
Yeah,
That in their gut, there was a bad feeling, but they were looking for, with their rational mind, they were looking for some evidence of why it was that they felt in their body some threat or some knowing that something was wrong. And so I actually have given it to all of my nieces and sisters, and I recommend it in every training because there are a couple of things. One is that it really reinforces that we've been conditioned to step away from the way in which we know. And
Yeah.
the example that he gives is how early this happens when a child falls as a toddler and they start to cry because they skin their knee. And an automatic response is, oh, it doesn't hurt, right? It doesn't hurt. And so we have all of these different things that we do and have been doing to condition people to ignore this knowing that we have that is so present when we do systems constellation. So I
Yeah.
just love that book. It's very spooky and a bit weird, but it's, I think, in every language on the planet, and it's been
Okay.
actually in print for quite a number of years. But it's so,
Who's the author?
oh gosh, I'll remember it at 2 in the morning.
Oh, you can flick me a link. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Send me a message.
it's definitely called The Gift of Fear. That sticks
Oh,
in
the
my
gift
mind.
of fear. I
Yeah.
wrote down here the fear of knowing. Oh,
Oh,
okay.
whoa. Well,
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Let's
the
just get
gift of
that
fear.
right.
Yeah,
Gift of
and
fear.
so it's just this that's the emotion that he's, of course, focused on because as a detective, he was so involved in things, like assault, but I love that it really translates in general,
Mm.
to really looking at all the ways, that we've been conditioned not to honor how much we know. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I sometimes say to people, in this work, because when they say, oh, I don't know that I could do this, I don't know that I could step into the field and or into a constellation. And I say, well, have you ever been to a party and you've walked in and you've gone, oh, that corner over there, I don't, that area of the room, I
Wow.
don't think I want to go over there. But hey, I'm really drawn over here. So it's kind of,
Yeah.
there's that
Yeah.
knowing. I'm going to listen to that. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Hmm.
like that example a lot. I
Hmm.
like that.
Thank you. We were having a little corridor, a little conversation before I pushed record, and I'm just admiring the view behind you. So those that can see this recording, there's a beautiful image behind Francesca of some deer and a birdhouse with a little bird sitting on top of it, some bushes and some plants and trees and hills
A
and this
little
is
bit of
from your back porch.
yes. Yeah. I'm very rural and I've just been we just dug our potatoes and picked our tomatoes and harvested garlic and so it's something that really grounds me that I really appreciate being out and gardening and stepping out the back door to get something for dinner and
Mm.
it's yeah, it's very quiet and it's also humbling, because actually the animals that are in the picture, because not all countries have them, but those are elk, and they're actually about the size of a horse.
Okay, I hadn't
They're
put
really
glasses
quite
on.
large, and we have bear here and cougar, and so there is something about, in constellation work when we talk about I'm the big one or I'm the little one. There's something about being on this land that really helps me to know my place. It really is when I'm here, there's no question I'm the little one because if there's a cougar in the yard, I am not the big one. If there's a bear in the yard, I am not the big one. I'm the little one. So,
Mm.
um, and the land is so large and so present, um, that I love that it's grounding, it's nurturing, and it's also humbling. So
Yeah.
it really is kind of a mentor for always, trying to be respectful, trying to be aware of what is my right place. And I think that family constellation, especially, although that's one of the things that sometimes people are a little bit reactive to. Well, I can't be the little one because I've taken care of my big sister all her life. I'm the one that does all the work. But when we find that, like in the family system, when we can really say, oh, this is where life brought me. That's
Mhm.
not a better, less than, greater than. It's just life decided that I would be born here in this system, in this sequence. And so it's not charged. It's just like that beautiful phrase that we all know, acknowledging what is. And then what
Yeah.
I love is how when people have their right place, when they feel comfortable and really can move their body in the truth of where life brought them into the world, then they're not trying as much to climb over everybody. So in their own personal relationships, in their own employment, there's much less of that jostling for position because they really come. And I think that's the part that I'm just so amazed about, how people presence themselves when they've been involved in family systems constellation. So there is just a certainty and honoring, and that goes with them everywhere. And you can really feel it in people. Or I sense, I think that I can feel it in people, and it's just
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, I think the work allows us to find our place in a way that we've maybe never experienced in our human experience so far, right? Especially if we're feeling lost or disconnected, and obviously with those entanglements that we're able to reveal in this work as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
and that's showing up. I think another way I describe it is also others receive us differently.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because there's been that shift within us. You know, we obviously receive others differently, but they receive us differently. There can be quite a softening in it, in the ease within the system. And
I think it's really grounding. I think it's really something that grounds people. And I think also just that bigger view, that bigger perspective. So someone said, and I really loved when I wish I could remember who said it, because I'm always listening to as many facilitators as I can, because languaging is so unique. And
mm,
how one person languages something might be like a context or a phrase that would never come out of my own paradigm. So
yeah,
I really try to experience as many facilitators as I can, because the way that they language really helps me to be able to expand in my learning
mm,
and in my facilitation both. But I love when somebody said in systems constellation, there, because what we're really looking at is something that is a function in the system. So
mm,
when someone has really had horrific behaviors, for instance, a child that's really acts out like outrageously. And when you look in the constellation and see that the two parents are not connecting, and so it becomes really the function of that child to pull them together and have them look at them and
mm,
their behavior, because they seem not to be able to come together to look at each other. And so that really naughty behavior, we could say it's a dysfunction, but when we do a constellation, so often we'll see that that child, unbeknownst to them, unconsciously, they really are serving this function of holding this couple together, keeping this family together. It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
really interesting. When I heard that, it seemed as though for a while everything had a like a spotlight on it, when I would say, "Oh my gosh, this is another dysfunction that's serving the
Mm,
system in some way."
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I thought that's
Yeah,
amazing.
you've reminded me of someone who came with lupus. They had lupus they were actually in a wheelchair. And when we went back through the her experience, and when it first showed up was when her parents split up. What it did was it kept them connected and communicated because of her being the common denominator in it. Yeah.
Wow,
And she acknowledged that. She said, that's all I wanted. That's all I wanted
wow,
was my
wow.
parents to be together. Yeah.
Well,
So,
and that's the other part that I really appreciate is that when we start to look at constellation, it's so different from having a focus on pathology because we're really looking at what happens in the system. And
Mm.
over and over again, it's a surprise that really, no matter how terrible it looks, what really is at the seed is love. It might be misdirected, but that there really is some kind of love. And I had a read an interview where Hellinger said, and I'm just paraphrasing, I don't want to misquote him, but it was essentially he said that when he facilitated, what he did was he tried to find the love and then do everything he could to defend it. And I
Mm.
thought that was really interesting because there are times that our definition of what's happening is so far from love. But if we really look at the constellation and if we can bear to see it, there really is love there. So, but yeah, but that's become another interest that I have, how much it can sometimes be a challenge to really acknowledge and make space for the love, even as a facilitator. So when we see something that's, we can only see the atrocity and
Yeah.
we become like really, um, feel a righteous anger or a righteous justification to judge. But if we can put that aside, which is not easy, or
Mm.
perhaps hold it on one hand and then with the other hand, look and see where the love is, even in those really terrible dynamics.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's a something that I've become aware can be really a challenge. So,
Absolutely. And you've just written a book about love.
I did. It's just a little reflections. Our winter is winter, so we're in the snow, and sometimes the roads are impassable. And so, one of the things that happens when I facilitate, a lot of times, if there's something new or if there's something that I really haven't fully found a place for it, I don't completely understand it. There are a lot of times that I'll make notes after a workshop or during a training just as a form of reflection to try to get a little bit more clarity. And so often what happens is then in the winter, when, I can only bake so much. So then I'll, come into the computer and kind of pull those notes up and lo and behold, some of them actually connect to each other and help me
Mm.
to have a bit more clarity. So one of the things that just seemed to be reappearing and reappearing was these places where I could see that it was really a challenge to make a big space for the love. So, for instance, one that's just really painful, of course, is if a child has been sexually molested by a parent, to know that it is an atrocity, it is wrong, there is injustice in it, and a child still has a right to love that parent.
Mm.
And the parent still has, in all of the confusion and imbalance, all of the terrible things, that there still very often is love that's misdirected or that's a component in that whole dynamic as well. So I think for facilitators and participants, being able to really make a big space for that love. And even in the example of some cases where I saw war criminals, for instance, people that had really um, committed atrocities, they sometimes were amazing parents and their children had no knowledge of
Mm.
their day-to-day activities and their child was a respite and that relationship was a respite from their what they were doing. And so in those cases I saw times when there was really a tension where it was difficult for people in the group or even the facilitator to really somehow find the generosity to
Yeah.
welcome the love that was there and honor the love that was there. So it was just, I think that we're always growing in the work. And so it was kind of a surprise that at this juncture, there were just these places where I saw that there could really be a tension in these places that are really horrific, and still love is there somewhere very often, and how much of a struggle it could be for the person who is doing their work, for the people in the circle, for the facilitator, to give space to that.
Totally understand that. Absolutely. From having experienced it personally myself, but also from and witnessing it in the field, you know, and it's not an easy thing for people to get their head around, their hearts around, but on a deeper level, right? Their soul is calling this, and this is what the larger system is bringing back into balance. And when we can put our mind aside, our analytical, this is not right, and like you say, righteous outrage and all that aside,
Yeah.
and feel what's underneath it all, feel that there is love underneath it all, even if it's mixed up and funky on the top.
Well, and I also became aware of how we really, in a way, like our society in the moment, is very focused on trauma. And it's a good thing. A lot of things come in terms of being able to identify traumas and resolve traumas. But I also started to see that that it was sometimes creating a deficit in terms of the amount of, what do they call it, attention allocation that could be given to resources and love. And so yeah, it was something else that I started engaging people in an exercise which was really fun, and for a lot of people it was surprising. A couple of times people were, um, I think, like what sometimes happens, that people are a little startled about what shows up. And so it's just simply inviting people to share with another person in the group, or even to just do a meditation or just a reflection. What are the love stories in your family? And so we sometimes know the horror stories. We have like this litany of, this one did a dastardly deed over here, and this person was, didn't have integrity, or this one was a robber, this one, all of those different things that come up. But it's been really interesting when people spend time actually thinking about the love stories. And if there are none, then we know somehow the system really didn't hold that in a treasured way, and didn't share it, didn't feel that it was essential, or could tell people out of love again the cautionary tales that would prevent them from loving, but forgot to tell them the numerous stories. I mean, we're all here. We all still, that's thousands of generations of sex, people, having relationships with each other, and having you know, the volatility of love and the complexity of love, but definitely caring for each other. And so that somehow in some family systems, people have arrived in a place where those stories have been forgotten or weren't told. And then sometimes people go and actually look at photographs, and they can see it. They didn't hear about it, it wasn't told, but they're surprised. Yeah, it's there. The way they're holding each other's hands, or the way they're smiling or looking at each other. There might have been terrible things that happened, or people became financially embarrassed, or someone died in war, or all those things that happen in life. But that there also were these love stories too.
That's really great. It's very cool.
Yeah.
Would you like to share about, because you've written quite a few books. I've got all of them, so I'm very grateful. And you do a lot of work around, well, I mean, I'm just paraphrasing here, but nature. Nature is a big theme for you. Yeah. Is there what would you like to share around that? What is there?
Oh, Thank you so much. Well, Nature Constellations, the book that was released before Love and Family Systems Constellation is the Nature Constellation Handbook. And I wrote it in such a way that my hope was that facilitators could actually just use it, some templates. And it also, I was very fortunate because I had some facilitators who are really using nature in constellations or using constellations to look at nature. And then I also included the voices of a lot of newer facilitators who were really honest about the places in which they, sort of were stepping in and had some hesitation or disbelief, or they were just so incredibly transparent, and then sharing what their experiences were beyond that hesitation. And so I feel really hopeful and excited. One of the things is that we can use systems constellation. Nature is full of a number of systems. We can use systems constellation to understand those systems. So as a result, people who are botanists or foresters or biologists can actually be introduced to using systems constellation as another lens through which they can begin to understand dynamics in the natural world. And there have been some things that have been just astounding in terms of being able to actually participate in and embody those conversations. So now there are a number of wonderful books that are coming out that help us to understand mycelium and the way they actually, the biggest communications network in the world. And then trees, different research. One that was kind of a little bit, well, I don't think you would say sad entirely, but something that was unexpected was finding that, for instance, pine trees, a lot of places where they do reforestation, they bring the trees in from the nursery, plant them. So they're not the progeny of the bigger seed trees that they're planting underneath. And so what they found was that when there's a big seed tree, a big pine tree that drops the cones and the babies come from that, the pine tree that is surrounded by its own progeny actually takes fewer minerals and fewer nutrients out of the soil.
Wow.
When they have all these replants that are not their babies, they are not as delicate in how they approach how much they take. And so that helps us to really start to wonder about when we're really looking for reforestation in the healthiest way, to have really healthy seedlings. Somehow, best case scenario would be that those seedlings are actually the progeny of the big trees that are in the area that they're planted. So I'm really grateful that science and botany and biology are kind of in parallel discovering things actually that all of us knew before modernity, that we knew that there could be times that we were distressed and would sit outside and the wind would come and brush our cheek, and we took it personally. We felt like it was a soothing, gentle, personal movement or gesture. And so in
Mm.
constellation, we see that that is the case, that everything, just as in most wisdom traditions worldwide, that everything is willing to be in conversation and they are in conversation. It's just a matter of us being willing to be in the same conversation.
As you were sharing that, so I was like noticing my dog came in here as you were sharing all this, and there's I'll pick it up and show you. I have some gum leaves
Uh-huh.
because I like to use them in when I do sound work, the leaves and the rustling sound. And this is a bit that's broken off, obviously. And as you're talking, my dog's sitting there. She's got a beard. So cute, little blonde thing. And this is stuck in her beard. It's almost like she was kind of, I'm a tree. I'm a tree.
And I mean, that's another, I'm so happy that you mentioned that because I probably wouldn't have said it, but there was a facilitator in Canada by the name of Edward Beltrand, and he is a veterinarian. And for almost 30 years, he had a private practice and built a veterinary hospital. And he actually used constellation as one of the modalities with pets. So
Mm,
one of the things that we can do is constellations with pets. And
yeah,
it's really helpful. I mean, they, in some ways, sometimes can be speaking about our system, sort of out of their loyalty to us, bring to our attention something within our own system.
absolutely. Well,
So,
she's actually jumped on my knee, and
hello.
this is the first time she's done
Oh
this.
my God. This is part of her conversation too, for
Mm,
sure. Absolutely. Yeah, because we see, for instance, at times when people have had a dog for 16 years or they've had a horse for 30 years, that's an incredibly deep connection. There are a number of times when people really are bereft. And so the kind of rituals that we have in Constellation to say goodbye and to say thank you, um, those can really support when someone has, this so dear being that's a part of their life and a part of their whole family system. Yeah, so I'm so happy because it did give me the chance to mention that I think that's one of the things when people know, for instance, there was a veterinarian who used constellations for 30 years,
that's
that in a
amazing.
way brings a kind of a gravitas, so we know it's not that we're diminishing the work at all. We're really opening the door for another way. And it also can be that, for instance, a behavior of hoarding small dogs in the system, you can sometimes find that that's a representation of a family system where many uh, children died. So
Yeah.
we had other periods of time where there were pandemics or plagues. And so, and sometimes in a community, there would be some kind of pathogen that came and truly uh, a generation of little ones would die. And so the parents, the community, the aunts, the cousins, everyone was so affected. And you can see sometimes where um, this impulse for hoarding small dogs in particular is I just want to save these little ones.
Mm,
And so when you look in the family system, there can be these poor souls that really, that was the only wish they had, was this impulse to be able to save these little ones.
so my mind is ticking over. This is Lacey, and
Like,
she is the second dog that I have had come to my life who has been from a litter of pups. That she was the firstborn, and that I midwifed them into the world. I know. So when she was being born, her mother was really struggling, and my sister called me and said, "Can you come over?" Because I do energy work and
yeah,
stuff. And as soon as I put my hands on her mama, the mother's waters broke, and I ended up massaging mum's perineum and bringing
yeah,
them all. They're
yeah.
all backwards. There was a whole story to it, but I remember thinking, all the last litter of puppies that I helped into the world, I got given the first pup. And I remember thinking, not obviously straight away, but well, that's not going to happen this time, because when this one was being born, I actually had another dog in my life that
Mhm.
I'd rehomed. And lo and behold, between that time and the time she was due, she was ready to find a home. This other dog that I'd rehomed did some silly things and ended up having to leave us. But I remember thinking this. And so as you're talking about people that are hoarding dogs, I'm like, what's the story in here with me midwifing these little creatures into the world? And, my great grandmother was a midwife. I know that.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and she lost lots of babies. So,
Wow. Wow.
and it's
Wow.
interesting because I have actually been speaking to Medoc this morning, who you
Oh,
know.
see?
Yeah. And we talked about a little bit about a few of the things that have, like my great-grandmother, the midwife, who lost all her
Yeah.
babies. And so I think she's quite present in my field right now.
Yeah, and it's though all those different opportunities that life brings that somehow seem to restore some kind of balance that really is sort of, ah, yeah, they made it, you know,
Yeah.
these little ones made it. So yeah, it's powerful. It's really powerful. And I think it's also really important because for some people, those relationships with pets are so primary. So one example is when people have been widowed or widowers, who really, particularly if they've been married 50 years or something, and that they may, they may also die within a year because there's just so much. Really, times when those folks encounter a pet, or it's almost as though the pet that they have at home saves them. So when we're really modern, when we look at different therapeutic models, there are sometimes that I think some people are conditioned to think those relationships are inconsequential or may not really be aware of how many possibilities are there within those relationships. What an opportunity there is for resolution that applies so far beyond just that one bond, you know. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
but I love how the dog is there. I really love that. Yeah,
She does some funny things, comes into my work quite regularly. My one-on-one clients, I actually have it now on my website that I say she's a therapy dog. Please let
yeah.
me know. Because most people are pretty good, but you get that occasional person who isn't so happy to have a dog in the room. So yeah, and if it's not her, it's the cat. Or the birds, little birds that come and sit at the window and jump
Oh,
around, or there's something outside. Um, I
it's
remember meeting you in Sydney and we did a piece of some work, and it took me back to being a child and knowing all of how nature was talking to me, and because I'd filtered a lot of that stuff out, but just the richness of when we stop and listen and we notice.
well, and I think with trees, I think that's one of the things that I think my first interest in Angwin Saint Just, who facilitates Constellation, um, does has a trauma university, but one of the first connections that I had to her work was when she wrote a book, and part of it was speaking about working with Vietnam veterans and taking
Mm,
them out into nature. And so I think that possibility was something that I thought, I mean, all Indigenous people have always, a lot of people called them, our relatives, like the elk or our relatives, the our tree people, rock people, you know, the mountain people. So I think this personification that a lot of Indigenous people had of different aspects of nature spoke really directly to this relationship and also the healing. So I think the teachings. I remember one time I was with an elder and I was thinking about which direction to go, and talking about things like psychology. He said, let me show you something. Come here. I want you to see something. So we just walked over to this tree and there was a scar on the tree. So there had been a lightning strike or something had knocked one of the branches off, and it was all, it was kind of a little bit of a bubble, but it was all healed over. And he said, this is what nature does. Nature is always healing. So
mm,
in a way, he was saying it's our nature to heal. So if we can know that, then it's very organic and it's going to happen. And we're in good hands. We're always in a process of healing. And so I just I bring that with me because I thought it just was again that kind of bigger hands that when we do constellation, when we look at things like destiny and fate and we're facilitating, we know in every moment that there is something bigger. There's some kind of container, something,
Yeah.
integrous or helpful. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. What else do we want to ask, Lacey?
Amazing eyebrows. I love those eyebrows.
She's
So
got
beautiful.
she's blonde and scruffy, a bit like me, and she's got shot over jaw. So this is in my household. We do this to each other sometimes. We're showing each other our bottom teeth, and that means what I love
Oh,
you.
oh my God. Yeah,
You're
she's
so funny,
beautiful.
so funny.
So beautiful.
Um,
Yeah.
do you have any examples, stories, or anything that for the listeners and the viewers that may, if there's anything that's sitting there that you could feel that you could share without obviously crossing anyone's confidentiality, just a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
sample of the work.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I've found is that I think there's this amazing sense of community that people have when they do systems constellation. And one of the reasons that happens so strongly is because, when you speak about not violating confidentiality, one of the things that we start to see is that over and over and over again, whatever my experiences have been, they're part of the human condition. And so it can be that someone has a very difficult experience and they want to look at it in a constellation. And it can be that several people have had the exact same experience. And I'll tell you how exactly. And this was very early on when I was a new facilitator, and I was very lucky because both of my parents came at different times to the Constellation workshop. And I mean, they were incredibly open people. And so they represented, I was facilitating. I knew I would never do their constellation ever, but they were all in, open, willing to represent. And at that time, of course, we're talking like 25 years ago or so, there were not a lot of facilitators, especially in the United States. I mean, there was a growth and an outcropping in Germany, but there were very, very few. So the chance that they would or anyone would be able to see someone else was slim to none. So they both came very open, and I was, excited, a little bit shy about it, but they always had been. I'm the eldest of 7 children, so we have a very dynamic family, and I'm an extended family in my mom's family, and so cousins, aunts, uncles. There's a lot that's always happening, but they always have been encouraging, and each, when they had opportunity, came. So what happened was someone sat beside me and wanted to do a constellation, their own constellation. And, Tracy, it was just like it should have been in some kind of very weird comedy movie because what happened was with my mother, and then the same thing happened with my father. Basically, what was placed was their constellation.
Wow. Yep.
And it was so parallel that I must have sounded a little bit like an idiot because I kept saying to the client, are you sure this is your constellation? Are you sure this is your representative? And so they were so precise all the way to when the one was done for one client, and it was so parallel to my mother. They had 7 children, which my mother had 7 children. So it was, and I was really in just such an internal conflict and so much in flux because it was like I know I would never do their constellation. I would never do my mother's. I would never do my father's or any of my relatives because I'm part of the same system. So my ability to be objective about their system is nil. It just like to be objective about my own system. That's why it's so wonderful to have a facilitator to to look and have representatives who may not even know me, but I'm I'm just still so many years later so amazed at how many points were identical and parallel. And essentially, I think I would say they had their constellations done, although I would never have done them. And I
Mm.
had to, at every juncture, every time a new movement came or a new representative was added, I was like, I wish I had an advisor here because this is my parents, and yet it's still the clients. And I checked in so many times with the client. I know they probably thought I was a little bit daft, but it was just, I really needed to do that. And then what was so beautiful was at the end. I mean, my mother loved it. She was public health nurse for years and very involved in healing and community and um, just a phenomenal person. And so in the end, my dad, I just had, because that definitely was not his foray. But I loved that he came, and so I said, "Well, so Dad, what did you think?" And he said, and he really rarely used any kind of, you know, what you'd say, colorful language or whatever, but he just looked at me and he said, "That was some heavy shit." So it's just, it was wonderful that it really, what it did leave me with, it left me with just an awe about the efficacy of the work. And I knew that I really want to always be aware that when there's something that is so deep, one person is the person that brought the constellation forward, but I have to know that there may be a number of people present
Yeah.
in that circle who are doing the same work. And maybe they didn't know that's what they were going to do when they came. That might not be that they would have wanted to do a constellation or asked for a constellation, but this knowing field has this, I've started referring to it as an elegant efficiency that
Yeah.
just really has this way of maximizing everything, every word,
Mm.
every person, every part. Um, it just, everything is so magnified. So yeah,
That's beautiful. I had the pleasure of having my mum and sister and niece and both my daughters come in the early parts of my learning as well. Because the work was so new, nobody had heard of it. I didn't always have enough representatives. So they would come in and fill in space. So like you, obviously never constellated them. I know they received so much from it, and they got to understand what I was doing too, in
yeah,
a different way than me just describing it. So felt
yeah,
really,
yeah,
really grateful for that. And when I would, because it was a 2 hour drive for me to go down to my training, and on the way down, I'd be thinking about the things I wanted to work on. Maybe if I got on the hot seat, this is what I'd look at today.
right,
And we could almost guarantee the first person that sat in the hot seat would do that
yeah,
exact constellation.
yeah,
And okay, different system, different story, but throughout it, I often was chosen to represent. And there'd be so many things that would line up in my own system. And I'd be like,
yeah,
yeah. So I didn't even need to sit in the hot seat.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and the other part that I think really encourages self-care and really finding what helps to ground us is that we can have the same experience when we're facilitating.
Mm,
I mean, it's not been unheard of that that I facilitated a constellation that really echoed something in my own system. And so to be able to really stay grounded and be grateful, know that there will be a space when I can integrate that, but to be touched in even a deeper way than when you see a human being with the courage to do that. I think it is just sort of, it will, it just will weave itself in the most incredible way in so many different places, in so many
mm.
different helpful, helpful ways.
Have you ever been working in a constellation and thought, I just can't go any further? I'm like, I need to
You
stop
know,
it
I
here.
feel really, really thankful that my introduction to constellation involved being able to watch personally Bert Hellinger, being able to watch Hunter
Mm.
Beaumont, being able to watch Gunther Weber, being able to watch Albrecht Marr. So from the very beginning, Bertold Olsamer, I was able to see a lot of facilitators who really were the folks that started this work. And so what I saw was it gave me full permission because I saw places in which, for instance, in one place, someone wanted to do a constellation, and I believe that it was Hunter Beaumont. The person came and sat, they began to say what was happening, and he said, and there was still a good segment of time, and I share this freely because people had paid a lot of money and there was a lot of pressure to go up until the last minute.
Mm.
And he just looked at the person and looked at everyone and he said, I stop now because I'm tired. And it was just that, just really to stop. And the other thing that I saw and that I have had uh, happen in constellations was when there is so much that has happened in a person's own life and in their own family system. And human beings have experienced incredible horrors. And there are times when I've known that part of what we can do is not to try to make it smaller. It can't be smaller. And so there have been times that rather than, let's put up 10 more people and have lots of healing sentences back and forth and juggle as much as we can, there have been some times when really there was just such a deep sense that the only thing that was appropriate was not to do that, but to honor what's there. Not for our own comfort, to try to, in a way, be dismissive or diminish, because that would be disingenuous. And so I
Yeah.
think that there are those times that if I were going by a facilitator handbook, and I think that's the difference between working phenomenologically and working in a really constructivist way. Um, I sometimes say phenomenological is that the constellation leads and the facilitator follows. And then constructivist is that the facilitator leads and the constellation follows. So I think that when we're really working in the field, um, there are those times that we get a stop. Really the field, the capacity of the group, the capacity of the person, the depth of what is true really wants to be given a space. And to do more, to go further would not be helpful, would not be healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think there definitely have been times, and and there have been times when a group could not do a particular constellation, that there would be a level of judgment or something that really made a particular constellation not appropriate to do there or then. Or, and that's another example, then if there is something that really has a lot of depth and a lot of entanglement, a lot of challenge, if someone wants to do that work like toward the end of the day or just before lunch when there's not really enough time, then I would definitely say, we really need to stop here and we'll come back to this, or it's something that really does need to be given more time. So I think the time and the group and the gravity of what has happened in that system, I'm so happy that I did see so many of the really experienced facilitators that would just stop, and
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that's a good thing. Or even the times when he essentially would not do a constellation, you know, would hear something would be very difficult, and he would basically just hold it with the person, acknowledging. Um, the other thing that I share sometimes is kind of naughty, but there was a time when Hellinger came to Southern California and he did a free evening for psychotherapists. And it was really packed. It was in a kind of an auditorium setting, lots of people. So I was sitting there and someone came to the stage and they had something that was really quite painful. And so they were, very activated, and he sat beside them really still. And then, you could almost see their bodies um, start to breathe like in sync. So
Yeah.
from being kind of activated to really being, more self-regulated and calm. And so then he looked at the person when the person that they had sort of said what was happening, and they were activated, and then everything began to be self-regulated. And then he said, "Are we done?" And the person smiled and said, "Yes." And one of the therapists behind me said, "What the F was that?" So, so I think we've had some hurdles, in really listening and being with what is and what's there, what wants to happen. But I think it's grace that's allowed us to have these amazing people that came before that really found this incredible way to navigate and gave us permission.
It's fantastic. It's beautiful. Well, you still want to be in this, don't you? Come on, Liam. Up again. Oh, she's up again. Never
Oh,
known her to be so interested. Hey.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
we've shared a lot, and there's so much more to share, but I would love for the listeners and the viewers how they could. I know that you've sent me the link and we're going to put it in the thread, but often there are people that just like to hear it and more of an audible. So how can someone get in touch with you if they would like to work with you or find where you're going to be working next? Because I know
Yeah.
that you've got quite a bit
So the
going
best
on.
thing is my schedule is posted on my website, and that is www.allmyrelationsconstellations.com. And so relations and constellations are plural. I just love that there's so much love with the puppy right now. But yeah, www.allmyrelationsconstellations.com. That has my schedule and contact information for the coordinators of the different things that I'm going to be doing. And then I hope that there are resources on the website as well. So there are different places that people can go if they want to know more just about constellation work in general or find facilitators in their areas. I always have Cecilio Rigojo has developed a beautiful talent manager, it's called, and it's a listing of a number of facilitators from all over the world. So, whatever country someone's coming from, it's certainly not all inclusive, but it gives them at least a sense that there are facilitators in their area. And then hopefully they're encouraged to Google and find more. So, yeah, so www.allmyrelationsconstellations.com.
Awesome.
And I'm
Awesome.
so grateful.
And you're going to be in Mexico in October?
Yes, I'm really looking forward to that. I I have such a heart for Mexico, and um, we have so many Spanish speaking people, and we have such a relationship. And so I think it's just especially important right now that that the conference is going to be held in Mexico. And I'm really, there was no way to know what would have been happening with the deportations and all of that kind of stuff. But it just turns out, of course, that in the way things work, there was this knowing, and it could not be in a more appropriate place to honor and appreciate that really beautiful, rich culture and all that it offers, and all the facilitators who will be there. I'm
Yeah, I'm
so
looking forward
excited.
to it. I'll come and hang out with you.
I'm so excited. It will be really good to see you again. I'm
Mm.
I'm looking forward to it. And
Yeah, and
I'm
it's a
just
special time of the year too, isn't it? It's the Day of the Dead. Like
Right.
Halloween, Day of the Dead. There's lots of
Yeah.
different names for it, but it feels really potent as well to be in there, to be there at this time. There's been a lot of push pull around going. Really, really wanting to going. Oh, I'm not sure if I'm going. Yes, I'm going. And I took a homeopathic remedy just last week. And the night before, I was like, oh, just because I still haven't actually bought my airline ticket. I've got my conference all sorted and all of that, but I haven't bought. And the next morning, I woke up and I was like, yes, I'm in. I can feel the surge of energy. So it's been a really interesting exercise. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I'm
That
getting
is a
more and
beautiful.
more excited as we get closer. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm just so looking forward to it. And I can't, I'm just in awe of the timing and the location and all the people that are coming is just, I mean, my heart is so excited about it. Really excited about it.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. And I know that there's much more wisdom and juiciness to share. Maybe sometime in the future I could get you back on here and we could dive a little bit deeper and see what else is sitting there for us to share.
It's
Feels good.
wonderful. And I thank you for the podcast. And it's something that I'm definitely going to share with trainees and other people that are interested in this work. I've appreciated the voices that you bring in, and it's really encouraging.
Thank you. Yeah, for New Zealand, for Aotearoa, because we are a small country and it's been sort of underground for such a long time, and we're really starting to to bring the work forward. And it aligns so beautifully with the Maori worldview as well. So this felt potent and powerful time to be able to do this podcast and just to share it from all different angles, all different points of view, and we go off on random conversations. It's not just
Yeah.
constellations. So yeah.
No, it's really very warm. I so much enjoyed listening because it just is gives so much permission, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Head over to Instagram and tell me what's resonated for you with this episode. You'll find me at tracy.cartwright. That's Tracy with no E. Cartwright. Or head over to my website, tracycartwright.co.nz, and receive a free audio with the gift from your ancestors. So until next time, be kind to yourself and have fun doing it.